Hi, everyone. Thank you all for attending our 2021 Mayor Brown Black History Month celebration. My name is Alana Hudley. I work in the recruiting department in Mayor Brown's DC office, and I am so excited to be your moderator for today's program. Today, we will be celebrating Black culture through art and taking you on a virtual exhibition. The goal will be to learn more about the local artists, obstacles Black artists face, and the impact they're making on the community and beyond. We hope today will provide you with a glimpse into the lives and experiences of the diverse and talented artists that make up the DC art scene. I must also let you know that this event will be recorded. Now, I'd like to welcome Regina Blackman, Administrative Support Services Manager and at Mayor Brown's DC office, to sing Lift Every Voice and Sing, which is often called the Black National Anthem.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won.
Wow, that song is so powerful for so many reasons. At the time it was written in the 1900s, Black Americans were fighting against discrimination and segregation and hoped that this song would be a symbol of defiance in the face of white oppression. Now it is a reminder of all the people who have marched, fought, and died for the freedoms of Black Americans, freedoms that did not exist when that song was first created. Thank you so much, Regina, for uplifting us with that song. On that note, I'd like to give you some background on Black History Month before we begin our panel discussion. Originally, Black communities celebrated together for only a week when historian Carter G. Woodson announced the second week of February to be Negro History Week in 1926. Woodson believed it was essential for young Black Americans to understand and be proud of their heritage. As Negro History Week grew in popularity throughout the decades, mayors around the country began endorsing it as a holiday. Eventually, Negro History Week grew and expanded into Black History Month. Black History Month began as a way of remembering people and events in the history of African diaspora and continues to be the celebration of the triumphs, sacrifices, and accomplishments of Black Americans. Today, we celebrate prominent figures such as Martin Luther King, Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, Langston Hughes, Maya Angelou, Barack Obama, and so many other African Americans who have made significant contributions to America and the rest of the world. And that brings us to why we are here today. Black Americans have always made valuable artistic contributions to American culture, but some of their contributions often went unrecognized. Our vision for Black History Month this year at Mayor Brown was to highlight and celebrate Black artists who are making an impact in the community. Throughout the month, we introduce each of you to a different Black artist every week in the Artist Spotlight series. As mentioned earlier, the hope is that you learn more about the DC art scene and the individual stories of each artist presented today. Without further ado, I'd like to provide a brief bio of each of the artists along with a snapshot of their work before inviting them to join the discussion. Our first artist is photographer Tayo. Execution at the intersection of passion and purpose is the ethos of this self-taught artist as he captures Black culture, Black people, and Black identity through his unique lens. The 26-year-old Nigerian picked up his first camera in 2016 and has never looked back. His works, produced under the brand Tayo Jr., have included partnerships with Nike and Adobe and have been featured in Forbes, Essence, Teen Vogue magazines, and on Black entertainment television. Our second artist is dancer and choreographer Kashan. Kashan's artistic journey began in the early 90s when he dance battled at the Underground in downtown Atlanta where he grew up. His dance career evolved in fall of 2005 when he joined Georgetown University's dance team as a freshman. Through his journey, he discovered dance to be a universal language. Kashan enjoys traveling, directing his own projects, and expanding his company Chrome, which sits at the intersection of fashion, entertainment, and virtual reality. Our third artist is rapper, poet, visual artist, director/producer, Oslice. Oslice is a Nigerian-born Prince George's County native who began writing and performing raps at the age of 9. From elementary school to college, her initial audiences were her classmates, specifically at the University of Maryland. Oslice's popularity soared in 2016, shortly after graduation, when she was named DC's Best Freestyle Artist in Verizon's 50 Freestyle competition. Since then, she has amassed a huge following and is known for her creative visuals and jaw-dropping lyricism. Our fourth artist is Nani. Nani is a visual artist and seamstress who attends Duke Ellington School of the Arts. She also does digital art, paintings, and drawings. She designs and makes her own clothing, with her favorite mediums to use being Procreate and her sewing machine. Nani is inspired by music, history, her life, and above all, her mom. She desires to continuously improve her art and strive for growth. Last, but certainly not least, is Angela. Native Washingtonian Angela Marie Jones seeks to form a full-bodied legacy to influence younger generations through areas of the arts, business, and mentorship. Angela is a singer, songwriter, producer, and activist who has been charming the masses since the age of 4 through her gift of voice. She is a gospel recording artist who has performed with genre billboarding charting artists, and additionally, she is a freelance artist management consultant for independent artists. Currently, she serves as the Director of Arts to Duke Ellington School of the Arts in Washington, D.C., also her alma mater, where she continues to live out her purpose through activating youth through public arts education. And showing currently or next will be a few pieces of the artwork from the Duke Ellington students that Angela works with. And now that I have provided a brief introduction, I would like to invite all panelists to join the program. Hi, Tayo, Kashan, Oslice, Nani, and Angela. Thank you all for joining us today and engaging in this important discussion. As already stated, I will be your moderator and will be helping to share each of your unique stories to our audience. A little rules before we get started. Make sure you're on mute if you're not speaking, and then get off mute when you need to speak. So I'd like to start off the panel discussion with a little icebreaker as an opening question for all of you to answer. The first question will require a little reflecting. Who was the first Black artist in your field who inspired you? Whether that's in photography, in dance, in music, as a director. I'll start with Tayo, then I'll go to Kashan, Oslice, Nani, and I'll end with Angela.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Alana. I truly appreciate it. Um, I started my photography journey in college, and there weren't many photographers on campus at all. But the earliest photographer that I saw that inspired my work was actually a peer, and her name is Araba Nkuma. She's a very talented photographer who went to the University of Pennsylvania. I was right across the street at Drexel University, and seeing her work, which was just at that stage very elementary, was still something that informed my earlier work and definitely inspired my journey.
Awesome. Thank you, Alana, as well. I believe for me, the first inspiration was Michael Jackson, right? He's primarily known for his music, but I think he's equally known for his movement. So as a dancer, I was certainly inspired by just watching him move to the music. James Brown was another one. Shabba-Doo, known as from like Breaking, Turbo and Ozone, those guys, and then another guy, Mr. Wiggles, who was a dancer. But in terms of choreography, Travis Payne, who was Michael Jackson's famed choreographer, is the one who showed me that it was definitely possible to work with major artists as a creator, and his skin happened to look just like mine.
Thanks for the introduction, Alana. And just following up on what Kashan said, I think that Michael Jackson was the first person that actually inspired me. Just based on like his music, of course, and his dancing was amazing, but I think it was really his impact and getting to see how he was able to move so many people through music. It was always really special to me. And beyond just like being Black, the first Black woman I saw was Lauryn Hill, and followed by Lauryn, it was Missy Elliott.
Thank you, Alana, for the introduction. I grew up in Western Massachusetts, and I lived in an area that didn't have a lot of Black people, never mind Black artists. So I'd never met I hadn't met a Black artist before I started doing art. And all the fashion designers that I heard of were never Black owned or by Black people. So my love for creating garments was grown by people that came into my life through my mom. A woman my mother worked with taught me how to properly thread a needle. A college student that my mom worked with taught me how to knit. So I wasn't really inspired by a big Black designer, but my love for sewing was grown by people who I didn't even know their names of at the time.
Powerful. Thank you.
Awesome. Good afternoon, everyone. I would say I was first inspired by the Black creatives that I grew up around, which are my parents, who were the first social entrepreneurs that I met. Before that was coined a title, but when I think of the other vocations I have been able to be a part of, I think of gospel artists such as Yolanda Adams or the Clark sisters being some voices that I try to imitate or emulate in some of my sound. But I will also think of, she's not really well known for her being a creative, but Oprah as well, because I saw that she had different streams of income. I saw that she was a mogul in her own right, even growing up in the 90s. I was inspired by her.
Thank you, guys. That was very beautiful and very, very powerful. I really wanted to have you guys, or you all, reflect on the first Black person that you saw in your respective field, because as we know, representation is very important, especially for communities of color. And now that we've hopefully broken the ice, let's talk about your aha moment. This is the moment where you discovered your talent and that light bulb just kind of flipped. At what moment did you realize you were good at what you do? Kashan, we'll start with you, then we'll go to Oslice, Nani, and end with Angela.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Wow, I think the aha moment for me probably came initially in the 6th grade. We had a dance, and I grew up in Atlanta, so we would have dances at least once a quarter or so. And at the time, the movement that was popular was known as ticking, which is a combination of like popping and tutting and waving, old late 70s, early 80s style movement. And that was like all the rave in Atlanta at the time. And as a sixth grader, I found myself in the middle of a dance circle where we would battle and just go head to head. And I had no idea what I was doing. To have a camera, they recorded it, and later I got a chance to see it. That's not bad, and inspired me. And I think it's no different than what athletes do, right? When they study film. And yeah, that kind of lit a fire under me that, I wasn't just moving about aimlessly, and that I actually could focus in more on the movement and develop it.
My aha moment came when I was in high school. I was in the 10th grade and I was participating in a talent show. And it was Apollo night style, which is basically where the audience has the opportunity to boo you if you're not good and if they don't like you. So, and keep in mind, this is one of my first performances ever. And up until that point, I only performed in front of friends and family, people who have to be nice when you perform. So I remember getting on stage, and they asked me what grade I was in. I said 10th grade, and they started booing immediately because underclassmen are never supposed to win. So at that point, luckily the rule was you had to at least let the person start. So at that point, I get up on the stage and I'm like, they've already booed me. This is about to be a disaster. And I start rapping, and the audience is like silent for a second. And then everyone just starts going off. But it was like, luckily it was like good noises that time. And I eventually ended up winning the whole thing. And that was like the moment when I realized, okay, I have something here. I can actually do this.
Wow. Thank you. Oh, Nani.
Hi. I don't actually even remember my aha moment. Whenever I ask my mother about when I first started sewing, she always tells me that the first time she bought me a sewing machine, I was 6, and my mother said that I took it apart and put it back together the first time I saw it, and I played with it for hours. And then later I went on to create my first garment. My aha moment for visual art was when my 8th grade art teacher, Baba Sam, at DCI, helped me curate my work for Duke Ellington. At the time, I didn't think I was good enough to go to Duke Ellington, but him and my mom convinced me that I was, and they helped me audition and all of that. And that was kind of my aha moment that I was good at visual art.
And I'll come from an arts administration lens. How I knew I was supposed to go into arts administration is that, again, I'm an Ellington alum, Duke Ellington School of the Arts alum. I decided to go into business as my undergrad, all the while still pursuing growth in musicianship and singing with recording artists. But when I went to Howard University to get my master's, and I was still figuring out my path, I had an opportunity to do some work at Ellington. And as I thought about it, I was like, this is where I need to be. I'm talking about being a cultural leader. I'm talking about impact and giving back to the younger generations, and all the work that I do, even though I'm rigorous in business management and leadership, I think I need to be at Ellington. So while I was at Howard in 2014, that is when I had my aha moment that I not only need to be a creative, but I also need to be at the training grounds where other creatives can be birthed.
Thank you, guys. That was really, really powerful. So we just discussed this aha moment, and it's an easy segue to talk about the discovery phase. Discovery of your craft can happen at any stage or moment in life. Osice, you started rapping when you were only 9 years old. Tell me more about your first time rapping and how you discovered this talent.
So I discovered this talent because I used to be in a band with my cousins when we were kids, and we called the band the Little Cousins. And my sisters and my cousins would write the music. And I remember one time like hearing the music and not really thinking that it was that great. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna help us like write the song so that when we perform in front of the family, like, they're gonna really have something to enjoy. So I did that in my free time. Keep in mind, I'm a really shy kid. So the only time I actually had that boldness was in front of my family. And so I was a shy kid, and I was a shy kid in school. So one day I was on the bus and I saw these guys, and they were in the front of the bus battling. They were rap battling each other, and everyone on the bus was like, ooh, ah. It was like a really big moment. And I remember sitting back there and being like, those raps aren't even that good. But like, I'm saying that in my head, knowing that I didn't really have the confidence to like do it. So I went home and I wrote my best rap, and I came back the next day and I battled somebody, and no one could believe that I was even speaking, let alone rapping. But I remember like the confidence that I felt while I was actually doing it was something that I hadn't felt my whole life. So that was the moment where I was like, okay, this is something I'm gonna work on, and I'm gonna try to be really good at. And I just remember like chasing that feeling always. Whenever I'm on stage, whenever I'm getting to be O-Slice and getting to step into that like character or personality, it's always really exhilarating for me.
Thank you. Tayo, earlier while reading your bio, I stated that you picked up your first camera in 2016. That's only 5 years ago. And yet you've made quite a name for yourself, having been featured in Forbes, Essence, and Teen Vogue. Tell us about your first time picking up a camera and what that moment felt like.
So my first time picking up a camera was very curious. And I say that because I didn't pick up a camera for what I do now. I picked up a camera because I was always into fashion. So it's kind of vain. I picked up a camera to take more pictures and take higher quality pictures of myself and my outfits, which, you know, looking back on, I can laugh at. But at that moment, I really didn't know where this camera or where a camera and photography would take me. A camera that I got, the first camera I really got was when I was 6 years old, and that was like a toy more than a tool for me. You know, fast forward 15 years later, 21 years old, and you know, I have now this DSLR, which is basically, you know, a professional camera, and I had no idea how to use it. I was shooting on auto. I was just really playing again with it as a toy rather than as a tool that I use now. And it's just so funny that something that I could never have even imagined growing into being a passion and then later on a profession, you know, started out with just that curious interest in just documenting my outfits in a better way with high resolution. And, you know, lo and behold, as God would have it, now I'm in the position I'm in, and I'm very blessed to be in that position.
Thank you both. That was really, really, really good. So I know you both, O-Slice and Tayo, were able to experience some major accomplishments last year, but we can all speak to the hardships we faced in 2020. We witnessed quite a lot and experienced even more over the past 12 months. The unjust killings of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, the political climate and the state of the world, the millions of protests throughout the world, and a global pandemic that took the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. All of this had to have affected your art, but putting art aside for just a moment, let's talk about how it was for you as a Black person in 2020. I'll start with Tayo, then I'll go to Kashan, then O-Slice, and I'll end with Angela.
2020 was rough, and we are definitely still recovering and healing from all those wounds. As a Black man in 2020, it's honestly speaking, I was numb, and that's it's very hard emotion to embrace, because ever since 2016, when I got that first camera, I've been exposed to Black death, Black trauma over and over and over and over and over again, to the point where now, as a 27-year-old, or a 26-year-old back then, I was definitely numb. And I felt helpless, felt hopeless, didn't know what to do, you know, and now we're stuck in the house, and this is all we can see, and this is all we're fixated on day in, day out. It definitely took its toll on me mentally, emotionally, in ways that hadn't before, because I would always have that outlet. I would always be able to do other things to get my mind off of the issues, the current issues at hand. But, you know, with George Floyd's death, with Breonna Taylor's death, which still has gone unaccounted for, with just the countless lives that we were lost again throughout this whole pandemic, family members, friends. It was just so overwhelming and such a burden on my mind, on my spirit. And for a long stint in 2020, I just felt stuck and in prison, basically.
Yeah, I think very similar to Teo's experience. I felt silenced. I felt powerless. I especially related to Ahmaud Arbery's story because I'm a runner. I run early mornings. I run late nights. I run. Even the other day, it was 28 degrees out. It's like 11 p.m. I ran. And what scares me is that at any point in time, that could easily be me. I could be mistaken or just harassed. And that's a tough pill to swallow, an emotional pill to swallow. It takes a psychological toll, a mental toll for sure, and certainly did. And the way I combated those feelings at the time were to simply stay in go mode. I'm very used to stepping on the gas and just staying busy. So when all these things were happening, and then of course, subsequently the pandemic, I was very, I was just in that mode of staying busy to keep my mind occupied. But the thing that made it very real for me was the moment I decided to pause, take a look inward, and then also use it as a teachable moment and an opportunity to help my 9-year-old daughter who is coming up and who had questions, who, when we're turning on the news, we see another face or another hashtag. And my message to her was simply, these three main things. And I say it to her often, but believe in yourself, you can do everything. To falling and failing is somewhat is a part of the process, so seek it out, embrace it, because that's the only time that we learn and the only time we grow. And then lastly, and I think the most important part is that your mom and I will love you no matter what. So keep going. What's to stop you? And I think for me, it was an attempt to empower her to not allow these things to make her feel, those same feelings of hopelessness, but to hopefully encourage her to press on despite those adversities. So yeah, that's how I addressed it.
So similar to Kashan, I'm actually another person who's typically in go mode. I bury myself in my work. I'm constantly looking for the next idea and how to execute it. And with a lot of my work, I've written about the Black experience and some of the stuff and some of the trials and tribulations that we often go through. So like police brutality, like racism, white privilege, all of that stuff is stuff that I typically tend to focus on. And for the first time, I didn't feel like writing about it. I didn't feel like documenting it. I didn't feel like doing anything. I actually retreated completely because it felt so heavy. This was the first time where I didn't look to art as an outlet. I was really just trying to grapple with what was happening, because I think having those struggles that we've been dealing with, coupled with something that we've never dealt with before, the combination of the two things was just too much for me to handle at the time, if I'm being completely honest. And I remember trying to figure out why that was. And I think the lack of personal interaction was what kind of made it feel heavier, because I feel like in the past, when those occurrences happened, we were able to gather as a community. We were able to heal as a community. We were able to have some type of outlet that felt like healing. But when we were in the house and we were on the internet just watching bad things happen day after day after day after day, when something super bad was already happening, it was just too much for me to handle personally. So I actually had to tune out. I had to take some space and take some time to make sure that I was okay. And I felt guilty about it initially because my subject matter deals with it so heavily. I felt like I needed to be on the forefront. But then I remembered that I can't be good to anybody else if I'm not good with it myself. So once I took that time, things just became a lot clearer. And people actually started reaching out to me and telling me that the old pieces that I had already wrote and I'd already put out was still helping them in a way. So I didn't even need to write anything new. I'm sad that the things were still relevant, but I'm glad that there was something that people could lean on, and I could even lean on when I didn't have the strength to be there on the forefront at that time. And eventually I came around. Eventually I was able to go out and march and be there, but it was just a period of time where I had to step back initially.
Wow.
I can pull from everybody's answer, but to add, I would say 2020, I walked into 2020 a little numb and filled with grief because I lost my dad suddenly, November 2019. So I was already heavy laden. So when March came and I was still working, I was still doing my best to keep up with everything, all the while discovering a new level of grief. Then the pandemic hit. And then, as someone stated, history repeating itself in the form of police brutality and the injustices of Black and Brown bodies. It was hard to adjust quickly enough to be productive. However, because of my position, I work around young people, I work around our future leaders. I had to go in survival mode. And so, as I'm dealing with my personhood, as I'm dealing with opportunities for self-love, which is the term of this year or been the term for the latter part of 2020, I had to also lean into self-care. I had to lean into the stigmas that oftentimes Black communities do not talk too much about, but needing someone to help me with my mental health. Not saying that I had the extreme need of someone because of deep depression, but I needed someone to speak to. So I leaned it into having those conversations with a stranger in order to release some of the grief, release and converse about some of the loss, because I still needed to create. As creators, we always want to be able to bring something new and impactful. So, similarly to the other creatives on this panel, I was stuck, but I had to go. I had to go because, students like Nani need a space and need to have examples of leaders or other persons who are doing what they are aspiring to do. So I saw my the first senior class to have a virtual graduation, I saw them go through different changes and learning how to document their depression or their protest or their activism, and being able to see that also gave me a boost. Because what the children oftentimes don't understand is that they inspire the adults just as much as we desire to inspire them.
Wow. I think we just need to take a minute of pause. That was really, really beautiful, all of you. Thank you so much. I know 2020 has not been easy, so I thank you so much for being vulnerable in this moment and sharing your experience. I'd like to discuss how the pandemic has affected you as an artist now. Tayo, in your newsletter answers, you mentioned the pandemic has afforded you more time to work on your craft and has allowed you to photograph more than ever. Tell us more about how the pandemic has impacted your work.
So, as I stated, 2020, in accordance with everything that happened with all the Black death, the pandemic hitting, I definitely was in a mental rut, an artistic rut. I had a thirst in inspiration and motivation to even get out and do anything. So it took me a while to really get back in the swing of things. And once I started finding that foothold in my craft, the ideas just started flowing. And unbeknownst to most, I'm actually not a full-time photographer yet. I still have a full-time job. Back in 2020, I was still working in construction management as a project manager. So with things taking a turn from going to the office every day to now working remotely, I didn't have to work remotely in DC. I could be working remotely in different areas of the United States, working with different creatives, working with different artists in and outside of the industry. And this in turn not only helped me grow my portfolio, but also helped me grow my network. And as an artist, your network is everything. And especially in a time like this, where everything is now remote, everything is disconnected, it's all about the people that are vouching for you when you're not there, when you're not in those spaces, when you're not having those conversations that you normally would if the world and everything was open. So that was my biggest goal in 2020. That was to get out there, to network, and being remote helped me do that in a way that I never could before. I'm dedicating 50, 60 hours of my week towards just being and staying in the office. And now I'm still in the office, but in two different offices at the same time, if that makes sense. So that's where the opportunity came in 2020. And within this whole pandemic, I don't want to say I was blessed, because obviously there's so much negativity that this pandemic that has brought about. So I'm careful about how I phrase my words and say that it provided me personally an opportunity to grow my business and my brand.
Yeah, thank you. I know sometimes we kind of just have to find the positives where we can find them. So thank you for sharing. I'm happy to hear in a way the pandemic has kind of helped your craft. But the pandemic in general has just shifted the way that we operate. Specifically in the dance arena, the pandemic has shifted the way performers operate. The way dancers audition, perform, practice had to change, and it became harder to fully pursue dance and choreographed performances. Kashan, as a dancer and choreographer, how have you persevered in your craft despite the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, to the last point, just regarding the importance of embracing the obstacle as an opportunity to honor the commitments that we've made to ourselves, I think, and to others. I think that's exactly what this time has allowed for us. It's the chance to be who we say we are, right? It certainly has been challenging, but what a lot of folks might not necessarily understand about artists is that we are creators in the ultimate, and as such, many of the ways that we go about pursuing our art is very entrepreneurial. So I've been not only afforded the opportunity to take many of my lessons virtually and work with music artists, but also to pivot in many ways and use that creative spirit in me to do other things, to include help artists by opening a micro event space where artists have been able to come in and photograph and do video shoots and music videos, as well as companies using the space for virtual and digital productions. So in that way, yeah, dance kind of took a backseat, but my creative essence was still able to survive and thrive, and I'm super grateful for that. But yeah, artists, we are creators, we are entrepreneurs, and we are here to adjust if and when necessary. So in that way, I understand Ty's previous point about somewhat feeling blessed.
Thank you, Kashan. Nami, to my original point with Kashan expressing how you had to change the way that you operated during the pandemic, I know you mentioned you had similar experiences of feeling like the pandemic was stifling your work. Specifically in your newsletter interview, you stated the political environment almost crippled you artistically, yet you still created beautiful pieces. Talk to me about the struggles you faced as a Black person during this time and how you overcame these feelings to create artwork, such as the Nina Simone piece that won the Smithsonian Women in Jazz contest. And before you speak, I must add that winning the Smithsonian Women in Jazz contest as a high schooler is a huge victory. So I want to show this piece to the audience as you talk us through this. So Nani, now please talk to us about your experience and how you pushed through despite the pandemic.
Thank you. When you're a teenager with a working phone, it's hard to ignore all the traumatic things happening around you daily. It's sort of like an echo chamber of just trauma and pain, and you're so angry all the time. It's hard to funnel it into a kind of emotion It's hard to funnel it into an emotion that is constructive. In terms of art. So for a few hours a day, me and my friend Sky, actually, who's also a visual artist, we turned off all of our social media, all of our messages and news, and we just decided to draw. I did monochromatic pieces on Procreate, learning to use the app better. And because of this, when my teacher, Mr. Little, gave us the Smithsonian project, I was able to use my skills that I learned over the summer during the pandemic to create that Nina Simone piece. As you can see, it's a monochromatic piece of purple and pinks. Yeah.
Thank you, Nani. It's so beautiful. I'm glad we're showing this to the audience. During the pandemic, though, you also use your sewing skills to send masks to hospitals in Maryland. The pictures of these beautiful masks are going to show for a moment, and then we'll talk through kind of how you created these masks, the patterns that you chose, and what inspired you to do so.
To be extremely honest, I started creating the masks because I was antsy. During the summer, I had been sitting at home for almost 3 months doing nothing but schoolwork. And all of a sudden, I saw a video on YouTube on how to mass produce masks. At the time, I had an entire fabric bin full of African fabric that I had acquired over the years that I'd been in DC. I had already done a couple of orders of surgical masks for my mom and one of her friends down in North Carolina. So I decided why not to do some for a hospital. I got involved with a company by the name of Mass Match, and they connected me with the hospital in Virginia. So I then used the African fabric I had to create surgical masks using my sewing machine. And it really just felt good to finally be able to do something to help stop the pandemic besides just sort of sitting at home and doing nothing.
Thank you, Nani. Very, very beautiful. Kashan, the pandemic is not the only thing that has affected and impacted who you are as an artist. In your newsletter interview, you specifically stated, based on your background, your success was unlikely. Tell me more about your background and how that has shaped who you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. We grew up in extreme poverty, extremely poor. And I unfortunately witnessed the death of my father at the young age of 9. And that was traumatic in and of itself. But then, of course, growing up impoverished, seeing similar narratives, with my friends in my neighborhood and in my community was certainly something that, looking back, I can imagine that statistically, I shouldn't be here. I should not have gone to Georgetown. Like, I should not have graced many of the largest stages around the world with some of your bigger name artists, brands. And yet there was something embedded in the challenge that instead of causing me to stop, it actually fueled my fire and gave me the motivation and the encouragement to push forward despite the adversity. I think so much of what drove me at the time was imagining someone like me needing a voice, needing an advocate to fight for them, to champion for them, to stand in the gap and say, hey, I know how you feel. I empathize with you. I've been there, and I want to help. And having been there, I too have overcome. And this is how you can as well. If I can, you can. And it's this whole concept behind, rising together. It's the both and, as opposed to some sort of competitive spirit that is often also present. And the other piece, regarding my dad's death, I was actually encouraged. I spoke earlier about the entrepreneurial essence of the artist. I spoke earlier on it, but I was able to create a brand to honor him. The brand is called Chrome, Kashan Jerome, taking my dad's first and middle names, putting them together. And Chrome, growing up in my neighborhood, meant either guns or rims, right? If even in rap lyrics, you often hear chrome to your dome or sitting on chrome. These were the references, and the only people who had both were the killers and drug dealers, right? They had guns, they had cars with fancy rims, and for me and my purposes, that's not something that I wanted to promote, and so I decided to take back the name and look up, well, what is chrome? Chrome is short for chromium, which is the hardest known metal in the periodic table. It's stain resistant, tarnish resistant, corrosion resistant, highly adaptable, highly malleable, combines well with most other elements. And so from those elemental properties, we were able to derive our core values, which are strength, beauty, endurance, and integrity. And it was on those values that I wanted to build a brand that stood for excellence and achievement. And I knew that in any number of ways or against any challenge, I could remember the core values and thrive. And so even now I have Chrome tattooed on my body, and oftentimes people call me Chrome and they don't know, A, it's, you know, it's to honor my dad. So it's not even me, but B, it's the very thing that I also aspire to when I find myself, you know, facing an obstacle. And it's something that helps me to remember how powerful I am and how powerful I can be if only, you know, I put my mind to it. So yeah, I think in many ways I wasn't supposed to be here. And then of course in others, I was absolutely supposed to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kashan, for your vulnerability while sharing your story. To continue our discussion on persevering despite obstacles, I want to turn to Osice. Osice, you are a Black woman pursuing rap in a male-dominated field. As Black women, we face a lot of adversity. Particularly in the music industry, Black women have to work 10 times as hard just to earn the same respect as their male counterparts. Osice, talk to us about your experience as a Black woman and how you preserve your self-confidence.
I can completely relate to the having to work 10 times as hard part. I think that often, even before I started, I knew that I had to be really good to be taken seriously. When I first started rapping, there were only a handful of women that I could point to who were actually very successful in my field, and then in the field, in the style in which I choose to perform. So that was already like an obstacle, I guess. But then I also noticed this trend of there only being one popular female rapper at a time. So then that was always in the back of my mind. So I kind of went into it not really trying to be the female rapper and just kind of wanted to be like the best rapper in any setting that I'm in. So in terms of people like underestimating me, I love that because it just kind of sets the bar so low sometimes where it's just like, like I was already going to exceed whatever you thought, but it's just like an extra boost. There's like a shock factor, and it's unfortunate because there are a lot of female rappers who are amazing, but there's still this like bias that people have, and which never really made sense to me, honestly, because when I think of rap is writing, and there's no inherent handicap towards women with writing. You know, it's different with like a sport or something like that, but when it's actually writing, the only thing that has been able to differentiate that is just like access, and it's whether or not people want to take it seriously. So I always put my best foot forward so no one can ever say, oh, I'm good for a girl. Like that's so out of the question. For me, it's like, if you're gonna say I'm good for a girl, show me a guy who's better than me. And that's really just the confidence I've always had to walk with, because people try it often. People often try to underestimate me, but I love it. I love being the person where people don't know what to expect from me, so I can always blow their expectations out of the water.
Thank you, Osice. I'm taking that with me. So for the next part of this panel, I'd like to give Duke Ellington its own spotlight. For some context, Duke Ellington School of the Arts is a public high school located in Northwest Washington, D.C. It is named after the American jazz bandleader and composer, Edward Kennedy Duke Ellington, who himself was a native of Washington, D.C. Duke Ellington School of the Arts is ranked as one of D.C. Public Schools' top high schools, and its mission is to emphasize the arts as much as academics. Angela, as the Director of Arts at Duke Ellington School of the Arts, tell us more about your role within the school and how you're using this opportunity to mold young students.
Sure. I'm going to try to only keep it to 2 minutes because I'm about Ellington all day. But in my position, I oversee and manage 8 departments: dance, instrumental music, literary media and communications, which encompass our writers, filmmakers, playwrights, museum studies, which is unique to a high school space. That's usually a collegial level area of study, but we have students who are focusing on their curatorial skills or exhibition design skills. There is technical design and production, where we house our audio and sound engineer students, stage management, set designing, theater, which is the traditional form of art, but we also have elements of musical theater, visual arts, and which Nani is a part of, and vocal music. It was built out of the cultural tensions of two leaders in the early 70s, Peggy Cooper Kaferts, who was known on her GW campus as a cultural agitator, and once she got a little older, known as a philanthropist. But between her and Mike Malone, who was also a culture bearer in the arts as a choreographer and a director, they forged a friendship, and then later did what is called street theater. And street theater was basically talent going out on the streets, literally performing scenes, doing skits, things that we emulate to know now as like flash mobs. But they did that in the early 70s, and it created a buzz to where they wanted to provide that for underserved communities. So the underserved communities, again, were what we believe are at risk or predominantly Black communities, giving them access to artistic disciplines through a summer school that later became a after-school program that now is housed on 3500 R Street, right in the center of Georgetown, Ward 2. What I appreciate about Ellington is that we not only celebrate artistic achievement, but academic achievement. And so it is coupled in a way that we ensure our students have access to honor courses, AP courses. Our school is top 3, graduating with a 99% graduation rate, excelling in ELA, that's English Language Arts, being number 2 in the district and being number 3 in math. So we have not only cultivated what is known in the STEM world as STEAM, but we've done arts innovation where we allow our students to have collaboration within the arts disciplines. And then, of course, everyone has a voice and everybody's story should be used to bring change. So we also give them access to master classes with alum like Dave Chappelle, Denise Graves, and through relationships and partnerships between Kennedy Center and museums, we give them access to those opportunities so they can learn how to lead once they leave Ellington, whether they choose arts colleges or not. Should I go on? I can go on. But, today I'm here with one of my students, Nani. Again, I ensure that each department has funding, grants, because what people may not recognize or may be aware of is that public arts education is not something that is fully funded, nor has really taken shape in the educational sphere as something that is needed. However, we are seeing qualifying statistics that are showing that our students are doing better because they are able to have a creative lens and have curriculum in order to get the support that they need, whether it is through mental health supports, whether it is the counseling, the coaching of what everyone at some point through their Ellington journey has is a mentor. We try to create a safe space for budding artists. I'll let it.
Thank you, Angela. I know you probably could have kept going on, but I love to hear all of that about Duke Ellington. It was new to me, so thank you for sharing that with us.
Absolutely.
Nani, I want to give you a quick moment just to share your experience as a high schooler in Duke Ellington and what your experience as a young artist has been.
Yeah, all of my teachers have really nurtured me and helped me grow artistically. Duke sort of creates a space that constantly puts you around other very talented artists my age and who also have expertise in different things. So that also helps me grow my art as well. And that would be possible if I wasn't in the space that Duke creates. It can be hard balancing a normal school schedule along with additional art instruction, but it has also helped me gain dexterity, which I am very grateful for.
Thank you, Nani. I love to hear that. So since we just gave DC-based public high school, Duke Ellington School of the Arts, its own spotlight, I think now would be a great time to discuss the DC art scene as a whole. Angela, I'm putting you back on the spot again. Not only are you the Director of Arts at Duke Ellington, you're also a gospel singer, a songwriter, a producer. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the DC art scene and how it has evolved for you as a Black artist.
I think DC art scene, and this might not be something we really wanted to talk about, it can make you comfortable or it can make you extremely competitive because it's small, it's gradually getting bigger, but it is also competitive. It is very competitive. There are so many different platforms that, you know, even our mayor has created through her programming, Art All Night, that myself and even some of my students and maybe even other panelists have been a part of. There's so many different venues like the Kennedy Center, like smaller venues in the Southeast area that have given space to the arts. But I feel like it's, you know, it continuously is evolving and becoming more and more competitive in the sense that it's the exposure. Everybody is doing something, everybody is creating, it's just, you know, a lot of people finding their way. I think it's a great space to be connected to producers, to other artists. I think it's a great area to network. One thing that the DC area is known for is networking, and so it is great to learn more about other creatives and their impact and to see if there is any collaboration. So I think DC art scene is great. I think we need to learn more of how to house the arts in the DC area, but I think it is budding. I think it's not dying, even with those that may be on this panel may know of the go-go movement, where we're not trying to mute DC. I think that those new movements are very important to keep certain genres of music alive. I believe that the voice of Justin Johnson that does Mochella is very important for regionally Ellington. I mean, I keep on saying Ellington. I want to talk about Ellington so much, but to keep on the map, and also see so people know of our social and political impact in addition to our artistic giftings.
Nice. Thank you, Angela. Oh, Slice, you have also been a part of the DC art scene for quite some time. I'd love to hear how you interact and overlap with some of the other DC artists and how you envision the future for Black artists in DC.
Okay, thanks for that question. I think initially I began really performing at schools, mostly like whatever school I was at, or whether, you know, a church or something like that. That was my main audience. I eventually transitioned to the art scene via open mics, and I would do open mics in the area, and that's how I actually started to like double and triple my fan base just based on people in the area liking art. So I really got to see it from the ground up, because now that I do the bigger venues and the, you know, the U Street Music Halls and the Kennedy Centers and things like that, I've seen that there's such a like large gap between the underground and the mainstream. And I think that the gap is starting to close a little bit, which is really cool because, you know, we have the New Yorks, the Atlantas, and the LAs in terms of music. I truly believe the DMV is the next place, and that's DC, Maryland, and Virginia for those who don't know, but the DMV is the next spotlight city. And I think that that comes along with a lot of our artists actually transitioning to the mainstream, and that spotlight that comes back starts to highlight people on the ground and the underground and at the open mics. So I think that the future of the DC art scene is very, very vast, because we're not just great for music. We're great because of our photography first. We're great because of our videographers. We're great because we have such a beautiful and vast landscape, and people are constantly interacting with each other because we all kind of know each other. It's funny that like we all go to the same schools or we all go to the same church, and our communities overlap so greatly. And I think that a lot of the creatives are wearing more than one hat. So I'm a rapper, I'm also a poet, I also put together events, I just do whatever I'm able to do. And because I feel like I'm building an empire, and I but I know that there are other people around me who I think are equally as talented. So I'm constantly trying to build a bridge with other people that I know have the talent to get to the next level. So networking across is really, really great in the DMV because everyone's super, super talented.
Thank you. I'm excited for the DC art scene then. Between you and Angela, you guys have really set the scene for me. So speaking of the DC art scene, let's get into some exciting moments some of the other DC artists have had. Tayo, you had a photography exhibition called We Were Them That Dreamed in October 2020 that brought together several portraits from two of your series, Absorption and E Pluribus Unum. I specifically want to highlight Absorption because that is a personal favorite of mine. The series contemplates Black, the color, and its meaning. So Tayo, talk to me about this series, its impact, and what it means to you. And as you speak, we'll have some of the pieces playing for the audience to see.
Okay, thank you so much. And I also want to touch base on the question that's in the box right now. But starting with Absorption, this was a project that came from that creative lull that I mentioned earlier. This project, it came during a point in time where, I was just mentally at a low point. Artistically, had a lot of stress coming from work, family, and I just wasn't feeling motivated to create. And my girlfriend actually decided that we go to the Glenstone Museum, which is a museum in Maryland, for those who are not familiar. And in this, the first building that we went to and stepped into in this museum had this big spectrum called Spectrum 9 by Ellsworth Kelly. And it's just literally a color spectrum of red, orange, yellow, just as you see in these pieces, except they were in rectangular blocks. And there was someone wearing all black, leather jacket, black pants, black shoes, standing and looking at this painting in front of them. And me seeing that, it just snapped in my head, and the idea just came. I immediately knew what I wanted to do, what I wanted to create. I just knew that I wanted to have magnificent flowing Black bodies in front of this very colorful backdrop. And what tied it all together is that in early elementary art class, one thing I always vividly remember was being told that Black is the absence of color, which simply is just not the case. If you take a bunch of colors like you see in these photos, and you had a palette in front of you and just mix them all together, you would have this dark color. Naturally, even in biology, we are darker skinned because we've absorbed the melanin in our cells, has absorbed the sunlight and does so at a higher rate. And that's when the art and the actual color theory kind of just blended together to form the concept that Black is not the absence of color, but the absorption of all color and light. And the reception of this was just overwhelming. People really resonated with these pieces. This wasn't intended to resonate with the LGBTQ community, but naturally it did. It also just resonated with Black men and Black women in general, because this was just a celebration of Black beauty, Black bodies, especially during a time when the media and the world around us was attempting to tear us down. And it was a celebration of our lives, of how beautiful, how strong, how resilient we are. And I was blessed to be able to, later on in the year, exhibit this project along with another project of mine.
Wow. So I said that was my favorite piece before, but now it's even more my favorite piece. So thank you, Tayo, for walking us through that journey. So I'm turning this to Kashan next. In your newsletter interview, you stated one of your biggest joys in your career was choreographing the Pantsuit Power piece. Let's watch a clip of this piece, and then afterwards we're going to discuss.
I got this feeling inside my bones. It goes electric wavy when I turn it on. Off from my city, off from my home. We're flying up no ceiling when we in our zone. I got that sunshine in my pocket, got that good soul in my feet. I feel that hot blood in my body when it drops. Ooh, I can't take my eyes off it, moving so phenomenally. You're more like the way we rock it, so don't stop. And under the lights, when
was amazing. I absolutely love spontaneous outdoor dancing, otherwise known as flash mobs. In fact, I want to be one in one day. But I'm so curious to know how you were able to attract and organize over 100 performers for this piece. Walk us through creating this piece and some of the challenges and highlights that you gained.
First of all, we could definitely make that flash mob happen for you. Maybe we get all the
Put my name
Mayor
down.
Brown folks together. We can do it worldwide. It'll be an international performance. And secondly, I want to encourage any and all who are attending to Google Pantsuit Power and see the whole thing, because if you are familiar with that song by Justin Timberlake, it's a really upbeat, high energy song, and you'll really get a sense of the energy that was shared that day in the park. But wow, how did it come to be? So the Visionaries and I worked together on a show called Girls, which is an HBO show. We had done some episodes. I started as a dancer with them, and there was a moment within one of the episodes to where there was just blank space, and they wanted to fill in the movement with choreography. And I was able to step up. I gave it to them, really quickly. Everyone learned it. It went off without a hitch. And I think in stepping up in that way, it sort of solidified, my talents for them and kept me top of mind. So when this other opportunity came up, it's like, hey, we want to say something. We want to create powerful movement that is impactful, that is meaningful, that is socially and politically aware. Let's call our friend who we've worked with. And so these are my friends, Mia and Celia. They hit me and said, hey, let's get together. We'll get a bunch of folks together. We want you to help us with the choreography. So my role was co-choreographer, contributing choreographer. They were able to spell out for me what they had in mind, and together we came together and were able to turn a lot of symbolism into movement. So for example, at one point we talk about equality and Black power and reproductive rights, where we do a sign that is signaling ovaries and no fracking, and just a number of things that were really important to a bunch of folks. And the way we were able to get the word out was simply just through social media. I mean, social media is phenomenal in that way. You put a word out like, hey, we're meeting at such and such park one certain day. If you're interested, hit us back. And then when folks were able to send their email, we were able to send out the choreography, broke it down. So when we all came together, or by the time we came together, we had maybe a total of about 20 minutes prior to going out guerrilla style and filming this in the park. This was Washington Square Park, if I remember correctly. No, I'm sorry, Washington Square Park. We actually did a couple weeks later with Madonna, and this one was oh shoot, I forget. It's one of the other parks in New York, but we didn't have a lot of time like together as a group.
Wow.
Everybody was wherever they were, and they came together, like I said, just prior. But it worked out well, because I think something extremely powerful and undeniable happens when you get a lot of folks in one space who are committed toward just that common goal of love. There was sharing, we were celebrating diversity. So very similar to Tayo's piece, there was this rainbow essence of folks from varying backgrounds and ages. When we had children out there, we had pregnant women out there. So when you do get a chance to go in and watch the video in its entirety, you will see that we certainly did incorporate just folks from different places, and the pantsuit itself. Not only were the colors captivating, but I think they represented for us just the strength. I mean, in full transparency, we were doing this just prior to the election, and so we were also hoping that the Hillary would get in office, and so there was just something very empowering about wanting to speak to the strength of women, and we know that in so doing, we're speaking to the strength of humanity, and that's what we wanted to do. And I think the essence of that energy was certainly captured that day and beyond, because I still smile when I look at it, and I have folks, who review it from time to time, and who will, send me a message just thanking me. But I can't be thanked. I was just a part of what was meant to be, and so I'm grateful for the opportunity.
Thank you. What I'm hearing is that you're saying this piece was created to symbolize something bigger than just dance. It represents powerful and specifically powerful women. Kashan, do you consider yourself to be a feminist?
Well, I'll be honest. So I called myself a feminist about 2 years ago, and I was corrected by a friend who said, no, you can't. I mean, at the time, I guess, in her definition, she was defining a feminist as someone who has encountered and endured, experiences as a woman, and that I have not and never will. And so in that way, I think I've since changed my language. I do support, I am an ally, I am an advocate, but in keeping with that correction, I do not use the term, but I certainly, I want that equality. I think we need it. We've needed it for some time, and so yeah, that's where I land.
Thank you. So discussing your thoughts on feminism leads me to my next question, which is exploring the intersection between art and activism. Activism is defined as the policy or action of using vigorous campaigning to bring about political or social change, and creating art is an example of activism. How do you all use your art as a way to bring about political or social change? I'll start with Tayo, then I'll go to Kashan, Oslice, Nani, and Angela, so I can hear from everyone.
I feel like I've been reverting back to the events that occurred and transpired in 2020 and the effects that they've had on my art, because last year was the first time I actually sought out to use my talent and my skill set to do more than just bring out beauty and to do more than just fulfill my selfish needs and desires. I felt that with everything that was going on with the world around me, I couldn't just continue. I could keep on moving, but I need to move with more purpose and more direction. And that inspired me to create my E Pluribus Unum project. I was reached out to by Adobe, and I originally pitched a project that goes down the line of the rest of my body of work, beauty and just glorifying Black bodies and the Black experience. But I sought to do that now with more meaning behind it. So I actually changed the pitch that I sent them and asked to do something more pertinent to the events that were going on, which led to the creation of E Pluribus Unum, a project in which multiple people from all walks of life, different ethnicities, different races, different sexual and gender orientations were pulling on this rope, in which the rope was actually the American flag. And Oslice was actually one of the participants of this. And it was just something that the creation of the piece not only helped my mental state, given everything that was going on, but the reception was something that I also appreciated, because it was just kind of my method of protest, my method of speaking out. Different people have how they decide to fight back and how they decide to raise their voice. And I sought to use my talent and what I've been blessed with to do that.
That's awesome. Yeah, for me, I think my approach toward contributing in that way is I teach kids. I teach little Black girls and Black boys, little white girls and white boys, Asian, you name it. And I get to help them, yes, become better performers, but beyond that, my mission is to help make them better people. And so much of my instruction is certainly, about movement and music, and it's athletic and it's aerobic. And then there's a whole other piece that, ensures that they are aware of what's happening in the world. I have gained the trust of their parents, thankfully, and I get to be somewhat of a mentor to them and a positive role model, letting them know, how important they are, especially, back to the feminist question, especially the young ladies, which are the majority of my students anyway, because boys just typically and traditionally aren't aren't as numerable in dance. But one of the ways I do this, right, in my hip hop instruction is letting them know, well, where did hip hop come from? You know, these were repressed Black and brown individuals and communities in New York and Brooklyn and the Bronx, you know, early on, who needed a voice. I often say that art is certainly the outward expression of an inner emotion. And so, having been socially, politically, economically oppressed for so long, these folks felt the need to speak out, and they did so in ways that looked like dance. You know, sometimes you know, that dance took on, you know, other forms, but it was expression. I mean, hip hop, you know, and the elements therein, from graffiti writing to emceeing to you know, dance, which included breakdancing. Understanding this history is highly important, and for me, I get to affect the future by presently letting them know where we came from and why we do what we do.
Thank you.
As you know, I mentioned kind of being out of it, you know, last year, and not really having the energy to be my usual self and show my activism in the way that I typically do. So being a part of Tayo's project was actually very important to me, because it was the first thing that I was able to do and feel comfortable doing. And I remember when he presented the idea, I mean, I don't think I shot with Tayo up until that point, but I've always admired his work. So then that was a cool opportunity. But then when I found out like what it was actually symbolizing, it was just so powerful. And once I got to see all of the pictures of everyone back to back, I remember when it was the day that we had to post it, it was the 4th of July, like it just lined up so perfectly in getting that message across. And it actually opened me back up to, you know, being my regular self, because I felt like I was a part of something that was so beautiful and so powerful. And after that, I went back to protesting and screaming at the top of my lungs and like expressing myself through words again. Did protests. I got to perform pieces at protests. And one thing that I actually really liked was I usually do pieces that talk about the struggle and how we feel and the negative effects of that. But I also got to do and started incorporating more pieces about like Black brilliance and Black resilience. So we didn't always have to just feel the heaviness. Like I did pieces that had nothing to do with pain and nothing to do with struggle, and just us feeling good and looking good and being beautiful in all forms. So that's what my activism looked like last year.
Thank you.
So for me, I have used my art to be an activist. When I was younger, I used to do posters for all the protests that we went to during the summer. I made masks, and the Nina Simone poster I consider a form of activism. But as I'm only 16 and I feel like I haven't done enough, one of the most prominent memories of one of the protests I went to when I was 9, it was the Mike Brown protest in New York. And it was a pointillistic piece. It was a sign. It was a pointillistic piece of Mike Brown's eyes held up by 4 people, and it spanned the entire street. And I remember looking at it and saying that I want to do that. I want to have that much of an impact. And personally, I don't even think that my art is good enough to do the activism that I want to do. I'm always striving for growth. I'm always trying to make my pieces better than the next one. But when I do finally get there, I do want to do things like those posters. I do want to do things that tell history. I know that there's a lot of paintings that have to do with history. So all like the Baroque and I'm forgetting the name for it right now, but big murals about white history. And I want my art to get to a place where I can do pieces on Black history. Yeah.
Thank you, Nani. Before Angela speaks, Nani, you are doing amazing. Keep going. You got this. Angela?
Yeah.
I saw you nodding, so I had to step up and say something too.
Just to add to everybody, you know, activism can be subtle and it can be over. It could be quiet and it can be loud. So whether it is a billboard or whether it is going to your neighbor and sharing a letter that you sent to your council member, that is an act of activism. A way that I incorporated in my artistry activism was with the gospel group that I sing with. We did Moments of Hope. So we would release songs, original songs throughout the year, especially around tense moments, mostly charged by racial injustices. We would create visuals for some of the songs that may be well known in the gospel genre, and then also some of our original pieces. And, you know, to Nani's point of wanting to do more, there are several students here at Ellington that desire to do more. So we are also leaning into the activism of letting them know of their individual power, and that their individual power doesn't necessarily mirror someone else's. And through their process of growing as individuals, and even in my adulthood, knowing that I don't have to do too much to be a presence, and knowing that there is a power in just being present. That, you know, as we think of during this Black History Month, MLK and the beloved community, we all have our part. We all have our talents and abilities that can really push our communities forward. And I think, you know, as being a part of this Ellington community, that is a part of my job to seek the mission out and ensure that it is done well to impact the next generation.
Thank you, Angela. And I love the piece or the point about you saying just being here. Just being here, you guys, is a form of activism. That's so powerful. Before we wrap up this panel discussion, I want to give each of you an opportunity to just share the one main takeaway you want the audience to gain from this panel discussion. You all have one sentence to let me know what is the main takeaway you want the audience to gain from this panel discussion. And we'll go in the same order: Tayo, Kashan, Osice, Nani, and Angela.
For one sentence, I guess I'll just say what makes, I feel, all of us on this panel so special. And I guess this also answers the question in the box, is I believe all of us just realized our passions and didn't let any type of barrier, any type of social construct, any type of hindrance, any type of delay, any type of failure to stop us from pursuing that with our full force, our full might, our full effort, our full devotion. And I really just, that's what's given us the platform to be here speaking to everyone today. So that's my one takeaway.
Thank you.
My one long sentence is, I believe that creativity and innovation in all forms are the rent that we pay for our share in existence. And every day I believe that rent is due. And if we're not creating, if we're not giving birth to something new into the world, even if it is, you know, some sort of improvement on something that already exists, I believe that we are simply mooching off the creative contributions of others, and nobody likes a freeloader. So let's do our part and continue to create to help make the world a better place than how we found it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to follow up off what Tayo said, we're all here because we believe in ourselves, and everything that we've done in our lives have contributed to that same belief, and we've just worked hard towards what we believe in, and no one's going to believe in you more than you believe in yourself. So whatever you think you can do, make it happen.
Mine is Black people create art. Black people create meaningful art, and it's meaningful because it shares our stories with the world.
I love it. My sentence is art education is essential. Access to the arts is essential, and art saves lives.
Thank you all. That was amazing. And before we close the show, I'm excited to invite O-Slice to share one of the videos that she created. O-Slice, you have the floor to kind of give us a little background on the video that we're about to play.
Thank you. This video is called The Blue Room. I recorded it ironically in 2019, and it was just something to do with me and my band. The premise was I was asked to write a verse to my future daughter. And because I'm nowhere near wanting to start that phase of my life, I just imagined what I would have wanted to hear when I was growing up. So the reason why I said this is ironic is because I recorded it in my bedroom with me and my bandmates. And once quarantine started, I was actually scheduled to do a bunch of shows and start like a small tour. And because that was unable to happen, I was a little bit bummed out and I didn't really know what my artistic future looked like. So I remember this video that I recorded and I just posted it to the internet on a random Tuesday and it ended up going viral. I think it's because people resonated with the fact that they were stuck in the house and didn't really, know where they were going to get their musical performances from. So that video going viral was just a very early wake-up call in quarantine to let me know first of all, we need to pivot and understand that like whatever you thought for this year was going to happen, it might look different, but there's always still a way to come out on top or to succeed or, just positivity through the darkness. So I was really glad this video did so well because it meant a whole lot to me. It's called Ari's Reprise, and here we go.
When I am blessed with a bundle of joy, if it's a girl and not a baby boy, I'll thank my God for such a gracious gift. I give him praise for making promise this first on the list. High self-esteem and confidence, and then the strength to turn her goals into accomplishments, and enough love to know she's never got a second guess, but then the eyes to spot a man who's trying to offer less. May she be like her mama, with like half of the drama, not an ounce of the trauma, and some dreams of her own. May her wit be a weapon, every loss be a lesson, every decision be destined, and every seat be a throne. So when she looks in the mirror, I pray she notice her crown. And if she's wearing it natural, I'll be extra proud. But even if she puts a permanent, if the love she feels inside is permanent, then it's a perfect fit. Baby girl, you super fly, strong, intelligent, a special type. This world is not like you. They are not kind. They can not bring you down, but they will try. I try to trim us down, but yet we still grow. Try to dim us down, but yet we still glow. That's 'cause sun rays double as limelight. So black queen, you better shine bright. And if, one of these low boys is all up in your grill and you want him to chill, all you gotta do is say, no, I don't want your number. I don't wanna give you mine. I don't wanna meet you nowhere. And I don't want none of your time. No, I don't want your number. No, I don't wanna give you mine. I don't wanna meet you nowhere. And I don't want none of your time. No, I don't want no scrub. Scrub is a guy can't get no love from me. Hanging out the passenger side of his best friend's ride, trying to holler at me.
Thank you, O-Slice. That was amazing. Yes, applause for you. I want to thank the panelists, Tayo, Kashan, O-Slice, Nani, and Angela again for taking us on this journey and shedding some light on what it is like to be a Black artist in DC. Today, we learned that there is not just one Black experience. The experience of being Black in America is vast, diverse, powerful. Black Americans have always made valuable artistic contributions to American culture, but some of their contributions often went unrecognized. This panel allowed the opportunity to celebrate the local Black artists, and I hope the discussion and virtual exhibition has inspired everyone to support Black artists and their work beyond this panel. We should continue to celebrate the contributions Black Americans have made and use this as a starting point to learning more about the panelists and the vast experience of Black artists in the art world. We encourage you to support all of the panelists who have presented today, and the slide now will include information to do so. I cannot leave this event without giving my sincere appreciation and gratitude to all who have helped with this event. To Mayor Deji, the Assistant Director of Diversity and Inclusion in Mayor Brown's New York office, thank you so much for your hard work on this event and throughout the Black History Month in general. You have truly helped the Black lawyers and staff feel seen and important, and I thank you. Thank you to Aaron Bernard and Tony Davis, my colleagues in the DC office, Amber Thompson and Bill Barrow, the attorneys in the DC office, the marketing and PR team, and everyone else who has tirelessly worked on this amazing program. This officially concludes the event. Thank you once again for attending, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your afternoon.